Hi everyone, thank you for watching the talk show for the Master Programs of Archaeology. My name is Vera van Heel. I'm the Student Ambassador for Archaeology. And today we will be, discussing some experiences together with our current master students. So this will not be a video explaining the program structure or the different master tracks or admissions, things like that. For that, you will have to go to the introduction video. You can find that on the platform as well. But here we will be mainly discussing student experiences, because all of you are in the progress of making, your decisions on what you want to study next, which master might suit you. So we hope that learning from other students' perspectives will help you in this choice and, help you figure out whether or not this is the right program for you. So you can also ask your questions here. We will be having, a bit of a chat before, but in the last 10 minutes, we will be discussing your questions. So if you have the platform underneath it, there's a QR code. If you scan this, you can ask all your questions there. And then in the end, we will try to answer as many questions as we can. So let's meet our current MA students, then we'll be discussing these topics with. So let's start with Mary.
Hi guys, I'm Mary and I am a current research master student here at the Faculty of Archaeology. I am doing a science research master, but I'm also combining some Near Eastern archaeology in there as well. I also did my bachelor here in Leiden and I am from the Netherlands as well. So if you want to hear from someone who's been here way too long, you can ask me.
Thank you. Next we got Carla.
Hi, I'm Carla. I am an international student at Leiden University and I study applied archaeology with a focus on archaeology of the Americas. And before I came here, I studied archaeology and anthropology in Zagreb, in Croatia. And yes.
Thanks. And Maxime?
Hey everyone, my name is Maxime Mulders. I, just like Mary, did my bachelor here in Leiden. I'm also from the Netherlands, albeit the southern part. Currently I'm doing the Museums and Heritage Studies track within the master. And I also have a little side job at the faculty, recording some videos that you might even get to see if you study here.
Thanks. And last we got Talia.
Hi everyone, I'm Talia. I'm also an international student. I follow the global archaeology course here in Leiden, but I did study the history and classical archaeology previously in my bachelor's in Germany at the University of Rostock. My main focus is on Mediterranean archaeology, although there's quite some other areas you can indulge in as well. So yeah, we'll get back to that later.
Thanks everyone, welcome. So let's dive straight into it because you're all current master students here, you're all archaeology students here, and you're all in your second semester, so you all started this academic year. I'm really curious to hear how you've been experiencing Leiden so far. So maybe Mary, because you continued here after your bachelor's, what made you decide to continue here?
So that's a bit, it's a slight complex reason because I was actually looking going abroad. However, Corona did kind of limit my options as well. And maybe a part of it might have been familiarity as well, because I know what to expect at this faculty after doing my bachelor. I know how the system works, I know the classes, I know the teachers, but I also know the amount of the opportunity that I have at this faculty. I know what I can do and what the limits are. So that's also why I, for instance, take courses at other faculties as well. And I know that that's possible. So yeah, partly the opportunities, but also slightly the lack of other opportunities, maybe. If I'm very honest, I am at least very glad to be able to combine both osteoarchaeology and Near Eastern archaeology here, which was a very difficult thing to find at other faculties or universities, since they often give you this pre-packaged program. And here I was really able to sort of mix and match my courses in the way that I wanted them to.
Thanks. Sounds really interesting that you, as you said, can mix and match. So that might be good to discuss this later as well when we're discussing courses. But how is it? Is it any different from the BA then? Is it, easy to follow up after you've done your BA here? Or do you think there's big differences between the two?
So I do have to say that the BA here does, of course, prepare you for the master here. It does also prepare you for other archaeology masters. I do have to say that the master in the beginning, it had some introductory courses, and if you already did the BA over here, then those introductory courses will be a breeze for you since you've already had most of the content of those courses. So in that way, the BA does really prepare you for masters, but I don't think that the BA here only prepares you for the master here as well. I think that as a BA student, you can have the opportunity to go everywhere you want to.
Thanks. Great. I think it would also be good to hear from someone that hasn't done their bachelor's here and that came here to start studying their master program. So Carla, how has it been starting Leiden University for you?
Well, for me it was huge because Leiden University is a very prestigious institution. So I expected it will be different from my bachelor, and it really has been. I was fortunate to have one class at the university itself, and I was awed by how pretty the building is and how we have different laboratories and how students actually engage in research and they do things, and the courses are different and everything's different, and it feels a lot more independent than what I'm used to. So very interesting, but unfortunate due to Corona.
Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing. And it's good that you mentioned that probably that's a big difference from other universities as well. We have our own building and our own labs. So I can imagine that's not what every archaeology program offers. Are you using any of the labs at the moment by any chance?
No, my program, I don't think it entails us using any particular laboratories. We work more in the field. So no, I sit at home in front of my computer.
Great. Yeah, because you said from your tracks, so it might be good to start discussing the tracks again for a bit, because we have 4 different tracks. Again, if you want to know the precise details about it, please watch the introduction video. But we got applied archaeology, we got archaeological science, got heritage and museum studies, and we got global archaeology. And Carla, you already mentioned your track is not. So which track are you doing then? Can you tell us a bit about that maybe?
Well, I'm doing applied archaeology, which sort of focuses on, as the name says, applying it. So it's we're taught how to work in the field, how to manage projects, how to apply it to different fields. For example, we had a task where we were landscape designers. We had to design a neighborhood, a thing. So it's different from other tracks because we are not focusing on written research, on theoretical things. We go into the field, we work, we study prospective methods and how to use them, and how to write a project, how to budget the project, and things like that.
Right. So it really sounds like you're, preparing for a specific job in the field. Is that right?
Yes, we are sort of being prepared to work in contract archaeology. It's called CRM in America, so Cultural Resource Management, and it's private. But of course, we can do a PhD, and later on, if we want, we could get into academia. But primarily, it's about practical things and about working in the field.
Thanks for explaining. That's really clear and enlightening. Maybe then go to our next track, global archaeology. That's what you're doing, right, Talia?
Yeah, that's right. So opposed to applied archaeology, we focus more on the theoretical things in archaeology, and the track mostly prepares you for a more academic kind of career. Although the positive thing is, even though, like this is the case with Carla, we are prepared for one kind of career, but it doesn't mean that we're kind of caught up in it. Like, we can still do other stuff. And the great thing about global archaeology is while we do have our compulsory courses that focus on archaeological theory and global archaeology in itself, we still get to choose and pick and match the courses we want. So I still get the chance to do practicals, I still get the chance to do excavations, which is really, really nice. So even though we have like a red string going through our study area, we still kind of get to look into other stuff as well, which is really, really nice.
Interesting. I do have one more question about this, because it's called global archaeology, which makes me it sounds to me as if you'll be discussing the whole world. Is that really what you're doing in your program?
In a way, we are. I was a bit surprised as well, because personally, I don't really have that much. Okay, I have no background information at all about, I don't know, like Mesoamerica and other areas, because in my bachelor's, I focus on the Mediterranean as well. But with the compulsory courses, what the lecturers are trying to do is they pick another area mostly with each new lecture, which is really informative, because also if you don't have any background information, you get to learn so much new stuff without drowning in the new knowledge you gain. So that's really helpful, and it's also very interesting to get to know other things than what you mainly focus on.
Great. So in that sense, you would think maybe about like different processes and then compare them in different places across the world. Is that how that would be interpreted?
Yeah, it depends on the course. For example, now I follow a course called How Globalization Shaped the Human World, and there we are actually looking at globalization processes around the whole world throughout different kind of times, and also how some processes might have influenced each other. Like, for example, when the Spaniards arrived in South America and stuff like that. So that's also pretty cool. But apart from the compulsory courses, of course, you still get to, while you have your focus area, you can also pick some electives, and there you can also choose from, I don't know, the Americas or prehistory or Mesoamerica. So it's kind of up to you what you really want to focus on.
Thanks. Then let's continue with the next track, and that's heritage and museum studies, because, to me that sounds maybe a bit more focused on, the now or the present, maybe less so with excavating. Could you tell us a bit more about that, Maxime?
Sure. Well, I would tend to agree. Heritage is definitely a bit more focused on the now, but also somewhat on the past, as we have to look at how we got to the current point that we are at. So, for example, issues such as diversity and inclusivity might have arisen from previous practices in the past. Think about colonialism. So with heritage, you're kind of looking at how do we deal with this going forward as well. So it's focused on the present and future. Beyond that, you're also looking at, for example, museums, practices that go on there, but also, for example, public archaeology. How can we include people, or how can we work with people within archaeology itself, which is something I'm personally very passionate about. So it's quite the diverse topic to work in.
Thanks. Because since you've done your, your bachelor's in world archaeology in Leiden as well, what made you decide to, continue and eventually choose heritage as your master's as well? And tell us a bit more about the process of,
Sure.
how you came to this.
For doing the bachelor, you have like this introduction to heritage course, which is, I think, taught in the first year, which I enjoyed the topics. I enjoyed the more philosophical ideas behind it. And then in the, I think, second year of my bachelor, I took this seminar on heritage, which you delve a bit more in depth. And well, I enjoy excavating a lot. There's still the heritage aspect that I liked very much. So rather than just focusing on archaeology, I want to broaden up a bit, because in my third year of my bachelor, I also took a minor in, I think it was called Museums, Heritage and Collections, which focuses on museums, displays and such, and how objects were obtained, the general history of museums, which if you took that minor, you're going to get a course that's going to be heavily similar to it. But it was just topics that interested me a lot, and I just want to broaden my horizons and future aspects or routes that I could take.
Thanks, great. I will definitely come back to you later when we discuss, what do you want to do after your studies. But for now, I think it's time to move on to our last track, archaeological science, because Mary, already you told us you're doing osteology, but I can only assume that archaeological science includes more things than just osteology. Does it?
Yes, it definitely does. I tend to focus on the bones because they're my area of obsession, so to call, but of course botany and zoology are very big parts of the Archaeological Science master as well. So you get to choose which specialization you want to do. There are some general science courses that we all have together, and then there are some specialization courses and internships, and those you have with everyone who's interested in botany or in zoology. But it even goes further than that. So for instance, the botanists have their own club called like the Botany Club, and they go on trips together. I know that the osteologists, we have a research group with like the PhDs and our professors, and there we talk about new research and if it would be interesting to try something like that ourselves. So it's more than just courses, it even goes further than that. I do have to be honest and say that I am mainly hanging out with osteologists because, yeah, we all like the same thing and that kind of unites us. But of course, botany and zoology are just as big here. We all have our own labs. It's not that those are forgotten in this faculty.
Great, thanks. So there's each of these different tracks have their own labs. Is there also something for people that want to work with materials, say experimental archaeology, things like that? Does that fall under archaeological science?
So it does actually, however, it is it's located in a different part of the faculty. So the labs are all in a bag, and we have like the osteology and the zoology lab next to each other. So sometimes the professor will just run in and be like, "Do you think that the Steve is human, or could it be a primate?" So that's like it's more in our circle. However, we also have what's called a scherven lab, or like the material culture lab, and it's a very big room where you can work on pottery or flint or any other type of stone. So yes, there's also a specific course on material culture and even on petrography, if I'm correct. So if that's something that you're interested in, I would very much recommend you to check out the program and see what courses we have on the material culture as well.
Great, thanks. Cool. So we got this mix of, sciences and more applied archaeology, heritage, discussing the whole world. I think it's a good mix, and it sounds like you're all taking very different courses. But I do wonder, I guess we have to discuss the topic of the pandemic and working from home, not being at the faculty as much as we like, even though, we have these great stories about being in the labs and all that. But I do wonder, what has the start of the year, or maybe even now, what has it been like for you? Because it must have been different than what you expected, right? So could you tell us a bit about that, Talia? What was it like for you to start your master's here?
Yeah, I was a bit unsure about how everything would be also with the courses because of COVID, of course. But I have to say they managed it really, really well. So in the beginning of, I think it was September, October, we still had some courses that we could attend at the faculty if we wanted to, because of course the lecturers understood if we thought it would be too risky. And of course, if someone was sick, they had to stay home. But then when the situation got a bit worse, they kind of changed everything back to those courses that really are only theoretical, like you don't have to go to the lab for that. Those are really online. And that has worked really well so far as well. It's actually, if you think about it, a bit comfortable because, I don't know, I could just sit in my very comfortable leggings on my couch with a blanket and a cup of tea and just follow the lecture. You can't really do that when you're sitting in the faculty. But the biggest negative impact is, I think, like you don't really get to meet the people, especially when you're new here. It's really difficult. But the good thing is that we kind of have some WhatsApp groups. So it started out as only the new masters group where we could ask questions to each other. And then in the course of writing with each other, there would be some interests popping up. And based on those interests, new WhatsApp groups were kind of exiting out of this. So that's pretty cool. So in a way, we do have contact with each other and you do have your friend groups. But the weird thing is you've never seen each other in real life.
Yeah. Oh, but I really like the thing about the group apps. I bet it's different meeting each other online, but it's fun, that you still can match up with the people that have the same interests, I guess, or like cats, because I imagine that's the thing. I've heard that a lot.
We actually do have a group specifically for cats and pets.
It's great that you get to see each other's pets.
Yeah.
Something you wouldn't see if you're out at the faculty taking your courses in the big classrooms. So
exactly.
a plus side to it. What's it been like for applied archaeology, Carla?
Well, in a sort, it's it's great, but also not. The good thing is that I have a very comfortable setup, and I can comfortably track my lectures and everything. But in terms of applied archaeology, it's not that great because we rely on field work a lot, and Professor Janssen was going to take us to different field trips and show us things, and now we can't do anything. So I am a little bit concerned about that because I wanted to gain experience, and it's not working out that great. But it's not impossible. Field work is still being carried out, but in a lot smaller scale with fewer students. Few smaller groups because it's COVID and distancing and everything. But it does happen. It is maybe at least in the Netherlands, it might be problematic to travel. For example, I should be doing my thesis internship in the Americas because it's my specialization, and I cannot. But you can still do a lot of Dutch archaeology. That is still happening.
Yeah, because unfortunately, due to the COVID measures, it's not possible yet to go abroad for excavations and stuff. But still, were there some projects you could do? Because as you said, Janssen still takes people out in the field. So were you able to at least join some excavations or some outdoor field experiences?
Yes, I did go on one excavation in Bergijk, if I pronounced it correctly. And it was, two students, two archaeologists, and we had a great time. We finished a bit earlier than we expected. And I went on a field trip with design students from our archaeological theory class, and we walk around, collect things, and then write about it. So it's fine, but it could be better.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's applied archaeology, but I'm happy to hear you still got to do some things. So what kind of excavation was it in The Hague?
In The Hague, it was just walking around the beach. But in Bergijk, it was Iron Age mounds, and we were actually working on georeferencing research, which has been done in the 60s by P. Moderman, and I found it very interesting that we were so independent. The senior archaeologists were like, okay, this is your mound, dig it up. And we were like, okay. So we used the 2, 3, 4 method to, make a rectangle and then dig it up. And we drew a profile, and we measured it with GPS and everything. And it was just us doing our own independent research, sort of. And then after we were done excavating, we got the data from Archel, and we had to write a management plan. So it was upon us to envision what the monument is going to be like in the future. And it's really interesting that we are not just students doing something being useless. We are equals, and we participate, we contribute. So that was very nice.
Yeah, that sounds really exciting. You get all this freedom, and you see all the different sides of an excavation or archaeology. So maybe it's a bit of a segue into heritage then, because we already mentioned the monument things. How is it been for you, Maxime, starting your masters in COVID times, doing the heritage trip?
Well, most of the heritage courses were on campus that I had, so it was still in that 2-month period where I would see some of the people that also studied the heritage track. Beyond that, well, everything moved to online, obviously, because you can't be at the faculty really, unless for practicals and such. But it's been all right. There are either live lectures or pre-recorded lectures, but what you have a lot is just live discussions online. Beyond that, I also had a similar problem as Carla, where I was supposed to do a internship at a museum to gather data for my thesis, which is completely optional because the internship is an elective, so you can just pick something else if you'd like. But it's just the path I had chosen. Sadly, the museum's closed, so I ended up with no data for the thesis as well. But throughout the months, I've talked to various professors who all offered help, gave direction or different ideas of what I could do. So they've been really helpful as well in trying to solve it.
It's great. Yeah, no, it's not great to hear that your internship fell through, but it's good to hear that you find all these alternative ways, and that's something that the faculty does as well. So thanks for sharing. But in case of practical science, because that sounds a big part of archaeological science, at least, is it possible to still have your practicals now? Or is that also, up for debate? How does that work?
Yeah, so we did not have a lot of physical classes actually for the first half of the year. We did come in for a test because, especially with osteology, you have to take a specific test before you are allowed to work on the collections of the university. But currently, our lab is open. I know that the zoology and the botany lab are also open, and that students are working on both their internships. So instead of learning practical things in class, we have online lectures, and we're also giving presentations and giving each other feedback as in a way to still cooperate with other students, because otherwise it might get a little bit lonely as well. And then we get to go into the lab anytime we want, so the door's always open and we can just come and go at our own times. And there's of course all the preventive measures as like masks and disinfecting your hands and wearing gloves. So I'm very glad that we do still get to go now, and that we get to go so much, because we also have a bit to catch up on, if I'm very honest. So that's really nice that they have opened the lab for us the entire week, and that we can finish our work there now. Yeah, so I know that some students had a lot of trouble with their thesis because they wanted to get, for instance, collections or the data for their thesis from collections overseas, so not in this faculty. And then you are, of course, dealing with the travel ban currently. But those who are doing their thesis on material that we have here in the faculty, I know that they're all quite on schedule and that they're like having a great time. So I would also, maybe give this as a word of warning to like think about what kind of data you want and where you want to get it. I don't know how long this travel ban will last, but if you're not interested in, for instance, medieval Dutch populations, then you might have a bit of a difficult time. But for those who do, they're gonna have a great time, because we have a lot of post-medieval Dutch skeletons.
Thanks.
Best.
We have some people that like medieval very much, some people that don't. Thanks. So maybe then, the practicals, all the different things. I think it would be good to discuss courses for a bit as well, because it sounds like you're all taking very different courses and focusing on very different things. Are you taking any courses together at all? Yeah? Carla nods yes. Celia nods yes. Does someone want to say something about it?
Sure. If no one minds, I'll go.
Go for it.
Yeah, so I think I followed courses with everyone except for Mary, although I'm not completely sure because we might have taken the same course, but not in the same time slot. I'm not completely sure about it.
I can't remember seeing you.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing you either, but I know archaeological theory. I follow both with Carla and Talia. And I also focus on the Mediterranean as the focus area. So obviously I've had a bunch of courses with Talia there as well. So in general, I think, except for the sciences, probably followed courses with just everyone around the block.
Oh, cool. So it's not that it's, you follow your track and that's the people you'll meet. You really mix and match among, all the different tracks. Does that mean that, different people take different things to the courses as well? Because I can imagine, Talia, you focus maybe more on, the culture side of it, whereas Maxime focused more on the heritage side of it, and Carla focuses more, on how to apply it, how to do the excavations. Is that something you notice in class? Mm-hmm. Maybe Carla, can you answer that?
Yes, it's something I've noticed, that there is a core framework of what we're doing, but the professors give us a lot of freedom to do what we're interested in. So we are often encouraged to use, for example, essays that we have to write, that we can also incorporate them into the theme we're doing for our thesis. So We really are encouraged to pursue our own interests, and then we are just guided by the professors.
On the topic of, pursuing your interests, Maxime, what has been your favorite course? If you have to, name one.
Well, probably have to go for how deep history shaped the human world, because I think it dealt with a lot of different topics as well. I'm very interested in prehistory and Paleolithic, besides the Mediterranean, and with electives you can just pick a course from a different area or perhaps different field to do. If you're interested in that, then it was very focused on what archaeology back then means for now, or what happened back in Paleolithic, what it means for who we are today. But it also had this focus on how should we communicate our findings, which, like I said, public archaeology and communication is something I'm very passionate about and interested in. So it was great to have that in the course as well and discuss it. But in general, I found that in a lot of courses, actually, all different aspects of the different tracks come together. For example, application to how archaeology can be used today, or what it means. So yeah, but no, that's definitely my favorite track.
Wow, thanks. So it seems that, you discuss the past, discuss the present, but even you go as far as, discussing how it's, how it should be in the future then. It's like you're also very much looking forward with the courses you take. Is that something you notice as well, Talia? Because I think that, Maxime answered it in that kind of way, but would you say you see that as well?
Yeah, definitely. There's also one course that I had about what archaeology can do for the future, actually. And that was also very interesting because we kind of tend to think of archaeology delving into the past and staying there. But in a way, archaeology can also help, of course, with interdisciplinary kind of approaches for future stuff. Like, for example, we discussed a lot how the sustainability crisis might be helped with some archaeological approaches as well, because we do see that people were able to live sustainable in the past, so why shouldn't we be able to apply certain things in the future as well? So that was also very interesting, because I myself didn't expect it to go that way in that course, that it's actually possible to think about it that way.
Cool. Well, I feel like I could ask you many questions about the courses because it all sounds very interesting. So yeah, I want to ask one more question, I think, but maybe to Mary then, because, from the science side of things, what has been your favorite experience so far?
So I do have to say that being back in the lab and doing my internship currently is definitely the joy of my life, if I can say it like that. Yeah, I got to just work with material and put all the information that I learned in the first half year, like actually into practice, and work on sex estimations and Asia depth estimations. And it's just really nice to sort of see like the fruits of all that work that you put into it as well, and just be more prepared on collecting data for your thesis as well. So for me, definitely being back in the lab and doing that internship is very fun. I have to say that it can also be sad sometimes because we're currently working on children, and that is also a bit emotional as well. So it's not all just fun and interesting, but yeah, it's definitely a harsh topic sometimes.
Yeah, I can imagine, you're working with human remains. Thanks for sharing that. So then another reminder for everyone else, because, I've been asking all these questions. I'm very interested to hear about what everyone's saying, but you can also ask your questions by scanning the QR code. I've seen there's already a couple of questions coming in, but if you have any more questions, feel free to ask them. And we'll, try and answer them a bit later on. Because then I think it might be nice to move, from courses more towards the final product and your thesis. Again, everything sounds very diverse, and you're all creating sort of your own tracks and your own program. But, in the end, everyone has to write a thesis. So I would be curious to see what you plan on doing for that. So Talia, what's your research interest within the Mediterranean, and what is your, your plan for writing your thesis?
Yeah, so this is kind of funny because while I do focus on the Mediterranean, I do have a special interest in ethnicity and identity within archaeology and migration histories. So I don't necessarily stay in the Mediterranean, and that's also what's kind of happening with my thesis now. So I'm indulging into what we refer to as the Goths, and there's an archaeological culture in nowadays Poland that's been ascribed to them based on literary sources that were written hundreds of years later than what they are describing. And I could go on and on about why that's problematic and why we shouldn't do that. But basically, I'm trying to see if we can, rather than focusing on historical sources and genetics or stuff like that, if we can kind of like find a common identity or common ethnicity by looking at the burial practices, because with burials there are lots and lots of mindsets connected to them that have been established throughout hundreds of years in the proper way of dealing with the dead, the proper way of burying your loved ones, and that's things that just don't happen overnight. So my approach will be, well, if that's the case, then we should be able to see common things in all the different burials that we have there. And if we don't have common things, or things that are very different from one another, that could speak for migrations or other people coming into the group. To kind of leave it at that short. I hope that made sense.
That totally made sense. And it's also a topic I haven't heard much about, or a culture I haven't heard much about. So how came you, that's where your research interest went. How did you learn about this?
It started with a very harmless essay during my bachelor's, where my lecturer said, like, why don't you just indulge into the migration period and look at a certain ethnicity? And then I kind of started off with the Goths. And I found the theme to be so interesting and also so problematic, because there's a lot of stuff we really need to reevaluate since the things that have been done ages ago, that I decided to write my bachelor thesis about it as well. But because my main subject was mostly history, it was still more of focus on the literary sources rather than the archaeological sources. So this is what I'm trying to do now in my master thesis, because in my opinion, the archaeological sources are way more helpful when looking at these kind of issues.
Thanks. So do you expect there to be any differences as well between, what the literature says, what the archaeology says? Yeah,
I already found a lot of these differences, which is great, but I kind of need to sort them all a bit, and I hope I do have kind of an answer at the end, and it's not just more open questions.
Oh, thank God, this is not a thesis presentation. I was just curious to hear how you do it. But that's cool. Thanks. It's good to see that, you're reevaluating and discussing things, that probably a lot of people haven't learned much about, and it seems to be a bit of a forgotten topic as well. So great that that's what you're taking on in your thesis. Thanks. I'm wondering about Mary as well. Have you already got any thesis plans?
Yes, so I'm actually doing something slightly similar to what Thalia's doing. So, but then in a completely different region in the world. I'm very interested in Egypt and Nubia, so that's African. And so what I want to look at is the C group and Egypt. They're known to be like true arch enemies. However, we do see a lot of material and cultural entanglements. So like there are like Egyptian burial practices being used in Nubia, and a lot of material. And this was all like added to colonizing, and they were like, oh, the Egyptians went there and they dumped their stuff, and that was it. However, there are more and more fascinating theories coming up these days, and I want to look at if those Egyptians and the C group were actually as different as we think. And I want to do that by scanning the crania and analyzing with a statistical program the shape of the crania. So it's like gonna get very technical. I won't get into that, but yeah, so I basically want to see if the people were as big of enemies as that they are often implied.
Thanks. It's interesting that that's, that you will be doing that from an osteological perspective. Interesting. So I guess for the sake of time, let's move away from the thesis and move on to, what to do after you finish your studies. So Maxime, do you have any ideas? Do you have any, places you would like to work at?
To be fair, I don't really have any concrete ideas yet. I do know I would like to work in commercial archaeology for a bit, because I do enjoy excavating. which is a bit less of an opportunity within the heritage track. You're not really busy with excavations itself. Besides that, I could go work in a museum, which is also always very interesting, or perhaps something with public outreach, which is something I'm somewhat working on right now, but it's more of a side project rather than anything that might lead into work, although I did have a few conversations with some commercial archaeologists that could see some opportunities there later on. So,
Would you like to tell us a bit about it, about the public outreach or the commercial archaeology?
Well, I won't say the entire thing, but it's basically I have some ideas of where archaeology might be a bit lacking with public outreach, because you, for example, in the media, which is also discussed within the course, how deep history shaped the human world. It's not really archaeologists that are represented there. You mostly see like historians and such. And while I don't think it's completely the fault of archaeologists, I do think archaeologists can do a bit more. Also, especially in the media, which is something I'm trying to look at a bit, work out myself. So that's about the thing I'm working on.
Great. No, it's interesting, and it's good that you get all these ideas through your courses. That's only a start, I guess. It seems like you're really developing ways of trying to approach it. So that's good. It's good that the master does that. And I'm Carla. What do you see yourself working?
Well, after I finish my master, I want to do a PhD. I want to work for the university. I want to be a professor someday. And I don't know. I really enjoy tutoring. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy guiding people, and I want to write books. I'm really interested in other publications. I'm really interested in pseudoarchaeology because I've had a lot of experiences with people attacking me that aliens built the pyramids and things like that. So I sort of want to work on that. But I'm also really interested in project management. So I thought, I don't know, I want to do excavations for the university or, private companies, if, wherever life leads you, really. But I want to be an academic.
Great. No, that's interesting. And great that, you're already thinking about wanting to stay at the university, all these things like writing books. Would these be academic books or would it be for a broad public, you think?
Well, I would write, of course, academic stuff and for students. But I also want to work on things for the general public, where, making archaeology a lot more understandable, because a lot of our publications are for the scientific community, and if people were to read them, it would just be a bunch of reports from excavations and things they wouldn't understand. So it makes us not very approachable. So I'd like to work on that.
Thanks, that's great.
Yeah, and I thought of getting into animation and having either a podcast or a sort of YouTube channel about the more obscure things in archaeology. For example, I don't know, the Neolithic of the Balkans, because it's things that are not talked about, and they would have been very useful to me when I was a bachelor. So that sort of work.
Cool. It's great to see that actually all of you are kind of like busy with rewriting history, or showing things that haven't been that much in focus before. Yeah, I'm really enjoying this, but I think maybe we should finish with the stereotypes, because you said it already, the aliens, all those kinds of things. I bet another thing a lot of you guys would have to deal with is the toothbrush jokes, or digging up sand jokes, or the where you're gonna work jokes, because I think that's a common maybe misconception about archaeology, that it's really a degree that maybe not offers you as many job prospects as you want. How do you guys view this? Why still study archaeology? Why is it relevant? Why should people hire you? All these kinds of questions. Valia, would you like to start?
Yeah, well, it is actually a very common thing you get to hear, mostly from family, at least in my experience. I mean, especially my grandparents are still struggling with what I'm doing right now. But yeah, I would say that it depends on what you want to do, because if you do want to pursue like a good career in archaeology, a master is really necessary. It's something that our lecturers back in the bachelor's always try to kind of slap into our face, like, if you only have a bachelor's, you will get nowhere. And it was a bit harsh, but yeah, if you speak to other like really archaeologists, they will mostly confirm this. For example, I was working in Greece for the German Archaeological Institute, and one of the student advisors there actually said, like, yeah, you should really get a master, because if you don't, then people will sometimes even not take your research seriously, because the master is like kind of the phase where you get to indulge into the archaeological side more deeply, or at least that's my experience. Like the bachelor's was a bit more broad and like basic knowledge, and now you get to really learn to apply that knowledge as well, which Leiden University is very much encouraging, as we already heard. But yeah, it's there's actually a lot of things you can do with a master degree. Like you get to what's it called? You get to leiden, opleiden.
Education?
Sorry?
Education or
Yeah, you get to educate. Yeah, what Carla said, like you get the possibility to educate others. You get to teach. That was the word I was looking for. You get to be an excavation leader sometimes if you want, project leader. There's like a lot of possibilities that you can do. I mean, feel free to jump in anytime if there's something I'm forgetting. But yeah, I think if you're really sure you want to do archaeology, you should just go with it with everything you have, because if it's something you're passionate about, it's definitely something that's worth it.
Thanks. So I feel like the main thing from doing your master's as well after your bachelor's is you have more options probably. You can become that project leader, or you have that bit more background knowledge or in-depth knowledge that you might lack from just a bachelor. Like that is like general consensus, right? But then maybe you think like why would you hire an archaeologist? What do you think that we have as an advantage, or what do you think we learn that's more of a transferable skills, those kinds of things that not every other program might offer? What do you think is a big pro of doing archaeology? Carla,
I think that a big pro of doing archaeology is because we are sort of on the crossroads of both science and humanities. And we are taught to look at things from, different perspectives, to critique things, to look into, the more philosophical and approach. But we are also doing practical things. We are doing, I don't know, excavation. We are doing geophysical surveying. We can do a lot of things that are taught to, for example, geologists, or we can work at construction companies. And it's just that we are taught a lot of things that might be different from your usual engineer or STEM person. So
thanks. Would anyone like to add something to it? Mary, maybe, or your view on this?
Well, I mean, somewhere there is a truth in the saying. Of course, there's limited jobs, but I have not heard of a degree that will give you any job. Like if you study economics, then no one's going to give you a job as a lawyer. So I do think that we need to take it with a grain of salt as well. And if you know what you want, then you can also already start looking for things. I remember in the bachelor that Femke always posted jobs, and then she was like, if this is the kind of job that you're interested in, make sure that you do a minor or take like an extra elective in a course related to that topic, so you can like build your CV. So I do think that this is also partially what you put in is what you get out as well.
Oh. Words of wisdom, I think, to close off with. Thanks. Then we have still a few minutes left to answer the questions that have come in. I'm looking at them now. There's quite a few, so I hope we can answer all of them. If we cannot, there will also be the option to chat with Mary and me later. And there's also a video call on our information market later, where you can chat with one of our RMA students, Zoe. You can chat with a former Saxion student, and now Archaeological Science student Rike, and the study advisor Femke will also be there. But that's for later time. Let's see your questions now. Let's see. Is the Archaeological Science master always a research master?
So I think that I'll just answer this one. So no, it definitely is not. I am taking the research master myself because I wanted to just have an extra year to also do some TAing, so just to get a taste of like what academia would be like, because I might be considering doing a PhD. I don't know if I will, but that's also why I went for a research master myself. But there's also a normal master program for the archaeological sciences, and that really prepares you to the best of their abilities there. And then in that master, you can of course choose if you want to go for osteology, zoology, or botany. But that's all on the website with the study guide as well.
Thanks. And maybe briefly as well, you said TAing. What is TAing?
So TAing is being a teacher's assistant, it's called, and basically every RMA student or RMSc student actually gets to help with 2 courses, and then you have, of course, the professor who is giving the lectures, and then you have often a PhD student who is the head TA, and you are basically the tiny person who goes into depth with students about topics. So, for instance, I did this course on Near Eastern archaeology where I helped out, and then one of the students was like, oh, but everyone's looking in like the Fertile Crescent, and then in the Fertile Crescent there's the Golden Triangle, which is like the hot spot of archaeological sites. But that's also, of course, the research bias, because everyone keeps looking in that spot, so more will be found. But if no one ever treads outside of the triangle, then we will not find any other sites as well. So it's also teaching other students critical things or just like hacks on how to study. It's basically just helping them get through their bachelor and sharing your knowledge.
Great, thanks. We got another question about if there will still be online teaching in September. This is something we unfortunately cannot foresee. It really depends on, the national guidelines on this. So for now, it's only small practicals that can continue. But, if the situation improves, it will be changed. So it's really no concrete answer on that yet. That will hopefully come, in summer when there's more known about how the situation develops. So unfortunately, I cannot give an answer on that. Let's see. What kind of internships do you do? Maxime, would you like to take this one?
Sure. Well, for heritage studies at least, you can do internships at a museum or perhaps at a heritage site, or maybe some kind of agency that deals with heritage. Personally, I was going to do one at a museum. Depending on what museum, you get a different job, which might even just be like as kind of a front desk worker. But in your side time, you do get time to do your research there, if you like. Because museums are still kind of a very hierarchical system where you just kind of work your way up, in a sense. But there's a lot of opportunities if there's anything heritage or collections related. There's probably an opportunity to do an internship there.
Thanks. And if we're talking more excavation-like internships, Carla, would you say something about that?
Well, I mean, an excavation internship is an excavation internship, where you go into the field, and depending on what you're doing, you can do trial trenches, and then it's going to be a smaller scale excavation. You can do something big. You can do barrows. You can do all sorts of things. But unfortunately, I didn't really have the opportunity to attend much. And there is also something that is relevant for us that's online. Things that deal with, for example, remote sensing and prospection, which maybe don't require you to be in the field, and then you can process data, or you can make 3D models, or you can work in AutoCAD. And I saw there was one where you describe material, and then participate in writing articles and things like that for a project in the Caribbean. And so there's different things you can do.
Thanks. Okay, great. And then, I know it's not a possibility now, but of course there are many projects Leiden is hosting. You can go on excavations with professors and those kind of things. So that, these are all around the world, and unfortunately those for now cannot continue. But that's definitely, one of the strengths of Leiden as well, these whole worldwide international internships. And I think we have time for one more last question. Let me see. because we did get a question on digital archaeology, and we haven't discussed that yet, I think. But isn't that part of the archaeological science track as well, Mary?
That is a very good question that I am
It is.
not sure of, because yeah, I haven't had many like general science courses yet because they're all in block 4. So yeah, that's all that I know about it, if I'm very honest. I do know that there are some specialization courses and that people are taking those. There's this statistic course that was there in November that was on quantitative methods, actually, where people learned how to work with art studios. That's actually learning how to program even. So like, I'm basically someone who's glad that she can handle Word and Excel. So that's not something that I would ever be able to do. However, I know that there are lots of people who are very happy to do that, to work on statistical methods or to even learn how to do 3D models or work with QGIS or ArcGIS.
We work with QGIS.
But I would not know the specifics about the program itself. I would definitely refer to the study guide for that.
Thanks. That's great. You already mentioned a couple of things, you know, the GIS, 3D modeling. So I guess those are all the kinds of things you can do with the archaeological science track in digital archaeology. I see there's a lot more questions. A lot of them are quite specific or about courses themselves. So please feel free to, you know, chat with us later at a later time or ask them in the live video call. Because if you go to our information, mark it now, there's this option to join a live Q&A. As I said, with Zoe and with Rika and with our study advisor. And Mary and I will be there to answer questions on the chat as well. So I'm sorry if we're not able to answer your question right now, but know that there's different places to still ask those questions. And then to close off, I would really like to thank Mary, Talia, Maxime, and Carla. And thank you all for watching. And good luck with, you know, choosing your right master track. Bye-bye.